Good morning, Boker Tov, buenos dias, sabah el khair. This is Shanna Fold here with the Israel Daily News Podcast. I'm here to give you the headlines so you can get caught up quickly. You're listening, so you're already on top of your game. Survive and thrive, people. Knowledge is the best weapon. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020. Let's get to the news. Israel has entered the third wave of coronavirus, and the health ministry is planning to meet this afternoon to propose an immediate 3-week national lockdown. The lockdown would include closing schools, shutting down commerce, and limiting people to within a kilometer of their homes. It isn't clear if there is enough support among ministers to approve this plan. The Knesset dissolved Tuesday, and new elections are coming up. So it is likely that the decision could be affected by this. While Prime Minister Netanyahu wants the lockdown to be implemented as soon as possible, Defense Minister Benny Gantz supports a 2-week preparation period. Yesterday, infection numbers rose past 3,000 new daily cases for the third day in a row. Coronavirus czar Nachman Ash says there is a disturbing jump in morbidity and that the sooner we do a full lockdown, the shorter the lockdown will be. As of today, Israel's borders are officially closed to non-citizens, whether or not you had permission from the government to re-enter on your visa or whatever exception you had. The rule is supposed to be lifted on January 4th, but the government has the option of extending that to any date that they choose. The idea is to keep a new mutation of the coronavirus found in London out of Israel. Any person who lands in Israel will be forced to enter a state-run quarantine hotel where you must stay in your room for 14 days and only eat the meals provided to you. The biggest number of people barred from entry are foreign students, including yeshiva students, who come to learn religious studies in the Holy Land year after year. So these are the new regulations. If you were thinking about coming to Israel, you need to make sure that you are a citizen. I'm going to take a minute away from the news to ask you to support this show. You can send over a monthly contribution if you are enjoying this report and think that it brings you value. There's a link in the show notes on the podcast where you can send a $5 or $10 monthly contribution to support the work that goes into this. The site is anchor.fm/Israel Daily News /support. You can also refer this show to 2 friends or leave a review of it on Apple Podcasts. That would be great. Now, let's get back to the news. On Monday, the United Nations General Assembly adopted 2 resolutions criticizing Israel. Out of the 23 total resolutions the UN has made to call out countries, 17 of them were directed at Israel. The country and its activists have been very upset, claiming that the UN continues to target Israel no matter the subject. While General Assembly resolutions are non-binding, they are considered to carry symbolic significance. One of the 2 motions ratified this week, titled Oil Slick on Lebanese Shores, condemns Israel over an alleged incident from the Second Lebanon War fought with terror group Hezbollah in 2006. The second criticized Israel for allegedly exploiting the natural resources of Palestinians in the West Bank and Syrians in the Golan Heights. The executive director of the Geneva-based UN Watch and a close friend of mine, Hillel Neuer, says the UN's majority is not interested in helping Palestinians or protecting human rights. He claims the goal of these condemnations is to scapegoat Israel. Haaretz has an interesting piece about the aircraft Netanyahu had wanted. Called the Wings of Zion, it's been 4.5 years since this Boeing 767 landed at Ben Gurion Airport and was then sent out for updates and tweaks to the plane. The plane caused major commotion because many people in the public, as well as members of Knesset, thought that the 767 was too expensive and a waste of taxpayer shekels. Yesterday, Morocco and Israel signed a peace deal that was in the works for 60 years. The article highlighted that the delegation flew there on a standard El Al charter instead of the Wings of Zion, which is meant to be for high-profile visits such as this, but since it's still in the shop 4.5 years later, it is not in service. A support campaign is now open for the family of Esther Horgan, who was recently found murdered in a West Bank forest near her home. It is believed that she was killed by a terrorist and that the murder weapon was a large rock. The Algerian Jewish woman grew up in France and moved to Israel, where she raised 6 children. Hillel Fuld and the group Israel 365 set up a campaign to raise $25,000 to help the family. Fuld is no stranger to terror-related crimes. His brother Ari was murdered by a terrorist in a West Bank shopping mall in 2018. This actually happened just 2 weeks after I moved to Israel permanently. I had wanted to meet this brother. His name is Ari Fuld, and I wanted to meet him because one of my relatives told me that he could be one of our cousins and that he was heavily involved in media, that it was possible that we were related, and I had seen his work. I never did get the chance to meet him. I had only been in Israel for 2 weeks. Here's your reminder if you needed one. Do things when you have the chance, ladies and gentlemen. You never know what tomorrow brings. If there's something you want to do it today. The donation campaign for Horgan's family has so far raised about $24,000 of the $25,000 called for. And finally, a little update on what happened yesterday in Morocco. An Israeli and American delegation flew from Tel Aviv to Rabat to meet with King Mohammed VI, where it was officially announced that diplomatic ties would be established and that offices would open in each of the other's countries. The normalization deal was announced on December 10th when U.S. senior White House advisor Jared Kushner landed in Israel with Meir Ben Shabbat, Israel's national security advisor, and the delegations visited the mausoleum of the previous King Mohammed V in the nation's capital. It is a national landmark. There, the teams laid wreaths on the tomb and then continued on to the royal palace to meet with the king, who did not actually participate in the public ceremony. I wonder why. Nevertheless, Israeli officials say the talks were positive and achieved their goals. All right, well, that's it for today's news. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020. Tel Aviv has a low of 13 degrees Celsius and a high of 21 degrees. That's 56 degrees Fahrenheit for the low, going up to 69 degrees for the high. Subscribe to the Israel Daily News podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing it from. I am everywhere. Thank you, Candace Cohen and Orion Fitlevich, for your contributions to the research and writing of this show. I'll send you off today with a song called Memories by Eugene Kurulap. He's a talented musician from Canada that fans of the Israel Daily News are always asking about. They're always saying, hey, who's that guy? I love his music. Have a great and productive day.
If I were young, I would marry you. There's not a thing that I wouldn't do for you. If you were young, would you marry me? Would there be things that you wouldn't do for me? And now that we're old but not gone, why are we holding on to our memories? Has our time come too soon? Are we forever doomed to live through memories? Now that I'm old, I remember you. Now that we're old, I hope you remember me too. Recognize this, I'm in front of you. Recognize this, that I'm singing this song for you. Now that we're old but not gone, why are we holding on to our memories? Are we forever doomed to live through memories? On and on we'll go. On and on we'll go. Now that we're old but not gone, why are we holding on to our memories? And all the things we did and everything we said lives on through memories. Now that our lives moved on, we've got to soldier on, march past those memories. Time to create new songs, time to forget those good old memories. Remember me.